pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before everyone sits down, I'd like to take, too late. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Fred Ogar. Dottie Ogar's our serving town clerk. Her husband passed away a few days ago. So. Thank you. Fred's week, for those who would like to attend, will be at the on Wednesday, tomorrow, between 2 to 4 and 6 to 8 at the DeFreeze Funeral Home on West Neck. Graveside service at the Shelter Island Cemetery behind us at 11, and reception at the Ogar Museum. So that the town clerk's office, because they all worked with Dottie and Sharon for so long, the town clerk's office will be closed on Thursday, June 13th from 11 to noon so that they can attend the funeral. Do you want us to get anyone in there if we can?
No, it's minimum hour, I mean, most hour and a half.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, so before we start with the agenda items, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on a topic that is not on the agenda, not subject to public hearing, legislative law? Or?
Hi, my name is Carol. And I just had 2 comments today. One is about a comprehensive plan, and the other is about the GEIS comprehensive plan. And basically, I would like whatever update you can give me on when we are going to see the BFJ revision of the draft that was submitted probably the end of April. The last CPAC meeting was April 29th, it's 6 weeks later. And so that would be one question, would be sort of a update on where it is. The changes that the CPAC rendered during their last meeting were basically minute. They went through every page and came up with, well, I don't think some bird pictures are properly labeled. So I felt like we would be getting it really soon thereafter. And the second comment is on the GEIS, the impact statement, the important environmental aspect of the comprehensive plan, because it looked like a lot of progress was being made on March 5th. A number, of the community spoke about the need for the GEIS and how long it would take and how much it would cost. And there were a couple of experts in the audience who, gave what I would call, pretty good testimony in opposition to what the consultant was saying at that time. BFJ saying, oh, well, you probably might not need it because of some concepts like scoping and cutting portions out of the plan so that it would not result in a negative declaration, thereby needing the GEIS. So that was March 5th, and it would be great to know whether the town board is going to do the right thing, which is, the question shouldn't be, why do you do a GEIS? It's why wouldn't you do a GEIS? And I think that the experts have pretty much, including Suffolk County, including the state New York law, have come down on the side of just going ahead and doing it. So that was my second question, is where are we versus March 5th?
Meg has been the primary contact with the consultant, so I will toss that piece of the question to you. I know we had looked at just the edits and things and trying to after the March 5th or whatever meeting, that was March, it was April, whatever. Yeah, whenever the comp plan committee last looked at it, Meg and I, and so it took us a couple more weeks to just sort of go through and are there any, just nits and gnats here and there, so.
Yeah, and then I was waiting for some information from some different departments, like the fire department and Ms. Shaman was gonna get me some information. And I just got that last week. So
gonna give it to Noah this week. I haven't submitted it to him yet. Oh, okay, all right.
So BFJ hasn't even seen it through yet.
They haven't seen it yet.
I was waiting to collect the information that I needed in order.
So between April 29th and this past week, BFJ has not had it.
Correct.
Oh, okay. And like, one of the issues with the GEIS was always, oh, it takes so long.
Oh.
And it costs so much. And I'm like, okay, well, we just had 6 weeks where we could have been working and hiring somebody to do that GEIS. And in terms of money, it's not that expensive. I mean,
I was
it's
gonna say, I
probably
was
no
gonna
more
answer.
expensive than keeping.
Yeah, I was gonna answer that, because I've got that, like, so it's gonna go to the consultants. When it comes back to the town board, then the plan is that we'll give everyone 4 weeks or whatever a chance at this table to read through it, and then we're going to put on chapter by chapter, each work session will have a chapter. That's when I want the town board to go through, and that's where we'll address the scoping, because if we're going to change something or there's pieces in the draft that comes to the town board, but then we collectively say we don't want this in there, or we're not going to move forward with that, I don't want to start a GIS on something that may not, like, this is a draft. So once the town board goes through all the chapters, that's when we will then request the GIS. And each chapter, each week, we're going to be like, okay, chapter 1, is there anything in here that needs to be scoped out for the GIS? And so we will do that every single week as part of our review. So that's my current plan. Originally, we were trying to push things along faster because we're trying to get grant money and deadlines. That's not going to happen this year. So that will be something in 2025. So the timetable, we're going to make sure we have a proper timetable for us to review everything, for the public to have public hearings. The DIS will be taking place at this, at the same time, probably as like the public hearings to get started.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good plan. I was just asking today because, a lot of the neighborhoods that are interested in this are, populating and having their annual meetings, and a lot of them are occurring in July, early July, I know my neighborhood is. And, that's kind of a great time to bring people up to date on, the kind of critical issues and stuff. So,
And I know some of us have been invited to different homeowners association meetings this summer. I don't know, like, who's been, yeah, maybe, Albert, you were invited to one, or?
No.
I don't
I
know.
was invited to the Hay Beach.
Oh,
We
okay,
did the Hay Beach discussion about water on part of their agenda.
yeah, I remember somebody at the table saying they
Yeah.
were invited, so.
well, all the work is definitely appreciated. This is, what you guys do is my review job. And I think probably, showing up at these meetings gets even harder in the summer. So, I was kind of thinking, maybe if we did get a document, because a lot of us that are interested just don't really get another chance to discuss it until there's the final draft. And there's a lot of things in there that the SIA was interested in and asked for language on. And we just have no idea whether the language made it in or not. There's a lot of stuff in and a lot of stuff out until you kind of, okay, enough said.
But Kim,
Yes,
but one of your suggestions may make some sense, which is maybe we should be interviewing firms now who can do the GEIS, so we're ready to go when we're ready to go.
well, I think that's a really excellent idea because, I don't want to get down in the weeds on this, but I don't think BFJ is the one. So,
Yeah, we're gonna open it up to
yeah,
a number of
yeah.
firms. Yeah, no, we haven't selected anybody to agree on.
Well, thank you, that's actually excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Is there anyone else in the room wishes to speak in the public?
Just me.
You're not public.
I live here.
But you
Do I have to go over there?
No, I'm just like, but you have a voice. This is for the true public. But let me just see if there's anybody in the Zoom audience
Okay.
who wishes to speak. Pam?
Yeah, I'd just like to
Okay.
follow up.
Just identify yourself for,
Pam Demarest. I'd just like to follow up with what Kim said about the importance of the GEIS. The New York State DEC, as well as the Department of State, actually do in fact recommend that a town does a GEIS when it comes to a comprehensive plan. And we also know that Suffolk County Planning Commission has also made that recommendation a couple of months ago to this town. So I do believe that looking into saying that regardless of what the final document will look like, doing a GEIS is a very beneficial thing to the town moving forward on future applications and development projects of any kind. So it seems to me that that discussion should continue about interviewing firms that may in fact be able to do that for the town moving forward and to get that started right away. I don't think there's a reason not to do it. There's enough to go through. And it will take time. I think that Noah from BFJ said it could almost take 2 years if you did a full one. If you did a complete GEIS instead of just a scoping version, it could take a long time. So, and I know that the folks who worked on the comprehensive plan are anxious to get it approved. And I think the public is also feeling the same way. So I just wanted to make a mention of that. Thanks very much.
thank you. Anyone else?
Don has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jan? Just looking for- Jan? Yeah.
These guys are good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Jan Soro, for the record. It's kind of spur of the moment comment, but I'd like to board to reconsider closing the meetings to public input. Almost all the items on the agenda are closed to the public input. I don't know how did that happen and who decided that and so forth, but I think the town board is cutting itself off from valuable input from the public. I'll just give you an example. This dog law, trap dog law, that's gonna be discussed today. There's asterisk to it. Public comments will not be accepted, but there's already a lot of emails floating around, being distributed, pro and con versus various aspects. Some people are for, some people are against, completely different perspectives, some very specific comments and so forth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of four of you are the experts on docking, but a lot of people in the public, they have quite a bit knowledge about docking, and I think the town board should allow public discussion before public hearing. You may benefit from it to craft a better law. If you don't hear anything, you just decide between yourself, you're missing a lot of public input, and public input is only allowed at the very end of the process. When sort of assume you largely made up your mind, perhaps on a bad input or incomplete input, let me put it this way. That's all I have to say. It probably the same would go for the proportionality law and various other pieces which are important, that you allow, I would appeal that you allow public input early. Thank you.
John, I agree with you. As you know, I think we'd be better served to get asked for public input on a
We
law.
have started to get some public input via emails. I've got meetings set up with people who want to come in and talk to me. I presume that you are all getting the same. And we will have public hearings, and the public hearing is when everybody can come together. And I don't always make up my mind before a public hearing. Going back to short-term rentals, like going into the first set of public hearings, I had not made up my mind. I listened to the public. Everybody got to speak at the same time. We moved it to the auditorium so that everybody would have an opportunity to, we took the time to sit and listen to everybody, scheduled a second public hearing after we took the legislation back, redrafted it. I think ultimately that process worked out very well. Not everybody was happy. We had months and months, a year of public hearing basically at work sessions. And it did not move forward for a whole year because it got so bogged down at the writing and crafting of the legislative level. So that when it went back to a public hearing and then redrafting, then the process finally got unstuck and moved forward properly. There is no other town that I know of on the East End who allows public comment at work sessions. The work sessions are supposed to be for us. The meetings are where the public get to come and talk. So I'm just following that, and I want to see how it works. We've had a couple of moratoriums where we were under the gun, and one of the things I want to discuss later today is the dot code. We are going to need to request another extension of 3 months because we're seeing that there is going to be a lot of input from the public hearing. So the timeline for that means that we will not get this passed in August. It's going to get bumped out longer. But then I think that will be a good process. That we'll be able to reject it, take everything that we've heard, go back, recraft it. And this was discussed over months at the WMEC level where the public was allowed to give input. So there has been a time for public input. We have some experts, people who know the waterways very well on the WMAC. They've got years and years of experience. So it's not like this has been done in the dark. A lot of work has gone on with this. So.
Amber, I don't agree with your aversion to opening it up to the public. I think the last administration, they did open things up to the public. Maybe it was 3 minutes that somebody could speak, but at least they could speak. And I think we'd get a better piece of legislation. I think we've always allowed the public to speak, and now we've kind of cut it off. And I think it's ineffective. I think we get a better piece of legislation to hearing input along the way from the public. They would be involved in the process.
We have a lot on our agendas each week. Do we want to schedule additional meetings then, more than once a week? Because if we start to open this up to, everything that we're trying to work on, we either have to slow the calendar down and not cover as many things as we're trying to get done, or we need to have more meetings because we're going to be here.
Myself, I think public opinion is valuable.
So do you want
That's my opinion.
meetings so that we can get more done on a weekly basis?
I think public input
Or do you want
is
to set it on the
valuable.
calendar? I'm just, what's the trade-off? Like, something's gonna have to give. So if you want to open it up to the public, then what do you want, like, how do we figure that in? Like,
Let's see how it goes, because we don't open things up to the public. I mean, it would give the public an opportunity to come into a work session and ask questions or give their input on a topic. That's all. I think it's a better course of action, but if you don't agree, we don't agree.
Albert, do you think the 3-minute rule would be helpful, bringing that back?
Yeah, at least that.
Yeah, why not just?
if you want to speak, you have to come up to the podium. But let's, before I call anybody up, I want to hear the table first, because this is our work session.
Good. Yeah, well, no, I was asking Albert, do you think it would be beneficial to bring back the 3-minute rule and let people comment? At least that would protect the calendar.
Like a 5-minute rule, I don't know, for a discussion of a piece of legislation, I don't,
It's really just to let the public drop their comments on us. So it's not really a discussion. So,
And dropping their comments can be done via email, letters.
Right.
Yeah, the expectation is people want answers.
I
right
would rather
immediately.
have us have a discussion. I feel like some of these topics we bring up and then sometimes it feels like you're talking to a wall because no one here at the table is really giving feedback or has done their homework in order to speak to something articulately. So I would kind of like us to be able to really review and dig into legislation and then make sure that it's something that we all feel comfortable with before putting it on public hearing. I feel like we're not getting to do enough discussion amongst ourselves about what's been presented to us. And I would really like to do a little bit more of that.
and to be honest with you, I'm kind of torn. I understand what Albert's saying and I respect what he's saying, but also we need time to work together.
And this is when we're supposed to be doing that.
So,
I don't think public comments would take up that much time during a work session. I really don't. I think people would make an effort to come in because they could speak to a topic. This is an Airbnb that from how many years ago, 8 years ago, Amber? It's not Airbnb. And I think we get a better piece of legislation. And if we make changes now, when a hearing's set, it's going to add, we have to schedule another hearing.
That's good government.
I think opening up for comments from the public is good government, but we disagree.
Just to follow up, I mean, I'm sympathetic to your short-term rental law, you know.
It's just an easy example.
Yes, agony and so forth, and perhaps there could be a compromise. I think, how about putting 3 minutes at the end of the, you know, limit at the end of the session for people to speak, like it was under the previous administration. So that should not,
Just pause for a second. Christine, I see we've got this.
Yeah, camera's on.
Do we,
still have audio going on?
we have audio? Okay, just checking to make sure we didn't lose the Zoom audience.
so that doesn't seem to be such a, you know, dramatic expense of time. People
We've had instances where we've lost audio, visual before, and then.
Is it good now?
Yep.
Yeah, so as I was saying, you know, it doesn't have to be so dramatic that, you know, it's gonna slow down the work of the town board, you know, just allow 3 minutes at the end or 5 minutes at the end for every speaker, how many speakers they're gonna be. So maybe they'll add 20, 30 minutes to your time. It's not such a dramatic thing, but you, maybe you will learn valuable input. And also there's a big difference between people being limited to submitting written comments that nobody else sees, as opposed to speaking where the rest of the public can learn what the issues are. Okay, so I don't think it's the same, so I'm sorry, I have to disagree with your saying how people can write the comments that, you know, who knows who's gonna look at them, if anybody will look at them at all. I mean, you're all busy. But if it's something, issue is brought up to the public and other members of the public can learn about those issues, then there will be a valuable input. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to our first agenda item. Well, I guess it's number 2, actually.
When I get to
Oh,
speak.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, right, I forgot.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
There's an issue that's not on the agenda today.
Mhm.
It's not set for public hearing. It's the resubmission of the plans to expand 7 Cheekwood Avenue.
Mhm.
This is not sitting well with me at all. It just seems like a bold attempt to circumvent the work we did last week, which was by taking back the authority to approve wetlands permits. And we tried to do the right thing by leaving things that were already being reviewed where it was with the planning board and taking back all the new stuff. But the problem is, a resubmission is really, as far as I can see, it's not allowed under the code. 129 basically says that if there is a change in a plan that was considered before, should be a new submission. So a new submission should come to us, it shouldn't go back to the planning board. And the little trick that's happening is not making me happy. So if anyone out there feels the way I do, speak up.
And I do.
I do too.
There's change in plans.
Okay, that this is wading into
Legal
legal,
advice.
which Stephen needs to weigh in on.
Well, then I'll go to the lectern and talk then.
No, I mean.
No, this is.
No, we as a
I mean,
board.
it shouldn't be going to, it's a new hearing, it's change in plans,
It should be a new.
application, a new hearing. I mean, this is getting pushed through and we,
I mean, what was changed? A couple hundred square feet were shaved off. They changed the name of a room and are resubmitting it to withhold that decision-making power. It's none of it passes the smell test. None of it. So.
This isn't good government. This isn't good government, what's happening.
This is a legal discussion that
Yeah,
should take
it's-
place in
it's
executive session because it
unfortunate.
involves a lawsuit.
Unfortunately, it is a legal
Damn it.
thing that we.
I'm just saying, anybody feels somebody out there, speak up.
Can't be discussed because it's illegal.
he said, does anyone agree? I agree with Councilman Diet's reading of chapter 129. And I'm a lawyer.
I used to be.
That was everything?
That's it.
Okay.
Are we discussing, is that it? It's Stella from the audience. Is,
Hi, Stella. Where the board needs to discuss it in a legal executive session, because there's guidance and there's a pending lawsuit, there's steps we need to get our ducks in a row internally before we can make a public statement that put the town at jeopardy.
yeah, so I just appreciate you gathering the facts. But an answer to Ben's question, the Heights definitely agrees with that. But thank you for getting the facts. And if you need anything from us, let us know.
Thank you, yeah. Just for the record, I too have personal opinions on this, but I don't feel that I should be publicly coming out with how I think things should go down until I have all of the legal.
Correct, because you could potentially taint your ability to be neutral if it comes to this board. So I suggest that we not,
To review the application.
correctly. So I'd rather talk about it legal as far as procedure, and then we can.
Mhm.
I just, for the record, I just said that I felt there was a change in plan and this needed a new application and a new hearing.
And I said the same thing, but a little more colorful.
Yeah. We will go over all of that.
Okay.
Trust me, I want to do the right, so, like you do, so,
Yeah.
okay. Now we're gonna bring Kenny in.
All right.
Item number 2,
I'm good.
giving us an update.
Yeah, so I have an update and then I have something else I want to bring before you all as a board as a proposal, and I'll explain as we get there. But I just wanted to do my little monthly update where we're at. You know, guys, my crew's been doing a great job since Memorial Day weekend, getting everything ready. We completed the beaches this week, so the 2 bathing beaches are completely outfitted now. The bathrooms are all open. The swim lines are in place. The lifeguard stands are in place. So both Crescent and Wade's Beach are, ready that way. We've also, we're very busy this week in preparations for the 10K race. We started our first phase of it today, setting up the fence around the school field and down Bateman Road. In preparation for that. I had the whole crew out there today. The guys did a great job. They've been really doing, working hard, we're gonna have everything sort of tightened up around the island for the race. All the mowing will be done, everything will be good to go, not just the race route. We've also been patching potholes on the race route and getting everything 100% ready for that. I also just want to thank, I'd like to thank Elizabeth Galley too. I know you probably all see her at some point. She's always out. You mostly see her in Wilson Circle out here a lot, but Elizabeth's been responsible for all the plantings, the flower beds, and a lot of the plants that you see around the anchor, some of the town hall beds, Wilson Circle. She coordinates with the garden club, and they're working on, the traffic circle by mini golf, the traffic circle down here on St. Mary's Road. And she's helped out with some stuff around around my office and the building out there too. And we're doing some
Amber, if you can hear us, we did lose audio, but we can still see you. Can you hear me, Amber?
Just to let you all know, on the Zoom audience, we've lost our feed in the room, the audio and video at the moment, it seems. So as soon as we get that rectified, we'll get back online.
Very good. I think it's better. Back.
Okay.
Continue, I can continue. So I was just finishing about complimenting Elizabeth Galley and all she's done for the plantings and thanking her, not just for town building, she's also been helping us at Goat Hill too, and everything looks beautiful and she works a lot of hours doing that. So I wanted to just acknowledge her. Just also, I wanted to add about the beach, Crescent Beach. You might notice near the first handicap ramp, there's a shed, a small shed in place down there now that we built and put in place. That's to house all the lifeguard equipment and the handicap accessible wheelchair that uses the Moby mat to get people that need wheelchair access down to the water. It's just it's a bigger, more spacious unit to get that thing in and out of. And we also built it on skids, and we'll take it off the beach, and we can take it off the beach very easily in the event of a storm or at the end of the season and house it back at the shop so it doesn't get beat up by the weather.
That's at Crescent or Wade?
At Crescent. We utilize the bathhouse, the bathhouse at Wade's for storage. There's a storage closet in there for all the equipment that they need down there for all those same applications. So that's pretty much, my, as far as the update goes. My other reason for being here today is I wanted to propose something to the board. And I hope that you will support my proposal and hopefully we'll be able to move forward with it. Christina, can you put one of those slides up for me? So my reason for this proposal today, if you can give me that first image, I guess, Christina, is I want to propose, I'd like to close the construction debris and the metal debris pile to public access. Outside of just, outside of obviously contractors and homeowners, when they bring construction debris and all that stuff, obviously that will continue, go across the scale, dump the material and then leave the area. It's become, it's something I've noticed for many years as I worked for the highway department, before I was in this position. It's something that's been talked about for a long time. And I have discussed it with, with our insurance carrier. And I've discussed it with my crew down there. There's a number of issues, that I think pop up. And it's a working site and it's dangerous, and the amount of people that are in there is becoming, quite frankly, excessive. I put these images up so people just have an idea of what you're looking at. If you can see that pile to the left of the C&D area, it's a jagged mess of construction debris, all kinds of things, not just wood, but furniture, nails, you name it, there, all kinds of stuff is in there. So Christine, if you can give me the next slide. So I came up with, and this is just a handful of things. These are dangerous, I call them dangerous occurrences that took place at the recycling center. All of these actually took place in my, since I've been an employee of the town, not necessarily as the superintendent, but since I started working for the highway department. And just a couple were, I personally had to ask a parent to not allow their child to climb on the construction debris pile. It was like an 8-year-old child who was climbing on it as if it was a jungle gym. We've had 2 different ambulance call responses to people in the metal pile that were trying to take scrap metal. Both of them ended up, one ended up with a terribly lacerated knee, and the other one ended up with a bad cut in the hand, and subsequently there was an insurance claim against the town where we settled for, I think, $9,000 for the person who did it. We've had numerous near misses with vehicles parked in the workspace when people park there to go through and rummage through this stuff. And while all the time while operators are trying to load the various trailers that we cart the material off with. Those loaders are large. There are blind spots in them, and it's very easy. Forget about running into a car, but you could easily run someone over. And I planned on being here last week to present this, but I had a personal issue that kept me from being here last week. But honestly, the timing of this couldn't have been better, in my opinion, or thankfully it wasn't bad. But just on Sunday, I was called down to the recycling center because we had a resident who was attempting to salvage a valve off of a propane tank that had been slipped into the metal pile. And when this resident tried to take the valve assembly off, he ruptured the tank. He snapped the valve assembly, and that sent propane, gas, and smoke billowing out of the tank, to the point that the fire department had to be called. We had to shut down that whole area of the recycling center, and it was a 100-gallon tank, and they had to suppress it with water until the propane was dissipated. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. Thankfully, it didn't spark and explode, and thankfully, nobody was smoking nearby it or anything. It could have been disastrous. Christine, can you just hit the next slide for me, please? This is a picture that one of my workers at the recycling center, one of the crew members down there. This is a view from the loader with him attempting to start to make a move towards the construction debris pile, which you'll see off to the left, so he can load the construction debris trailer. If you can count, I believe there are 10 cars parked in that area. Now, this is an issue that's been going on for years. In previous administrations, there was talk that the workers that work down there have asked for this for a long time. They haven't felt supported in wanting to alleviate this at all, and I completely support them 100%. And that is just unacceptable. And people are remarkably stubborn and don't want to move. And that is an accident waiting to happen. Can you hit the next slide, Christina? This is the, and this is the propane tank. As you can see, I just wanted to take a picture of it. We saved it. It's been completely evacuated, but the picture to the right is where you can see where the propane was, coming out of and causing a problem. And again, we're lucky that nobody was injured in that. That could have been catastrophic. So my feeling is that this is, and if you go to the last slide, Christina, I want to make it perfectly clear that, and that's why I left this as the last slide. I am not proposing to close the goodie pile. I am not proposing that we limit people to going in the goodie pile, that we have anything to do with the goodie pile. The goodie pile is alive and well and will go nowhere. But once it leaves the goodie pile to go into the construction debris pile, I really think it would be in the best interest of all of us that those areas are left off limits. It's an accident waiting to happen. I did contact our insurance carrier, and I'd like to just read you what they told me after I explained to them what our normal daily operation is down there. They wrote, based on the materials contained in this section of the recycling plant, it is a good risk management decision to close this area to the public. Wood and metal debris can be sharp and pose a safety hazard to those who come in close contact, and there could be other unknown hazards contained in this section. Also, during the day, Shelter Island Town employees are operating heavy equipment, performing work necessary to the recycling center operations. This presents a safety risk to those entering this area and a risk of unwanted liability to the town of Shelter Island. Closing off this section with wood and metal debris seems like a prudent step to mitigate potential hazards and a good risk management decision supported by your insurance carrier. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that says it all to me. And I can tell you, I mean, I just listed a few things there. But I think we're just an accident away from something, and we were very close to having a very, very bad accident there this weekend. And so I think my proposal would be, I would like to make it effective July 1st, that the construction debris and the metal debris pile will be off limits only for unloading and not for any loading from the public. I've had signs made up to cordon off the area. I've got new barricades ordered to make a clearer pathway for people to get to the scale. And my staff is in complete support of it. They think it's been a long time coming, and they know that I support them no matter what in this. And if this is something that we will do, that they know that if somebody's not listening to them down there, that they can contact me and I can come speak to them. So that's all I have as far as that goes. If you have, obviously, I'm sure there's questions, and I will be happy to answer them as best I can.
How are the barricades going to be configured, Ken?
So, well, basically what we would do is, if you're familiar with the entrance to the scale as it exists, and where the hazmat material is right now, where that wall is, we would come off of that wall with the barricades. Imagine barricades coming perpendicularly off that wall to a choke point. So basically the only way that you go in and out is on the scale. So if you need to weigh something, whether for wet garbage, if some people weigh their wet garbage, right, don't get bags, they proceed through that way and travel over to the wet garbage area. Contractors who go in and have to be weighed, they would enter that area, then they would loop back just short of that area and come right back onto the scale and then exit through the normal exit. So, and there would be barricades, the barricades that exist as they exist right now, and we would just enforce, because a lot of people try to come in through the exit where people exit off of the hill for the topsoil and the mulch. and where people would exit normally off the scale. So we would close that off as far as, I mean, we have signage there that says exit, but I plan on putting up a do not enter sign as well. So it's like a one-way in and one-way out.
So your intent is to keep people from picking off of those piles.
Yes.
But if I drive up in my truck and I got a bunch of metal in the bathtub, I can still get weighed and dump it,
Absolutely.
but I can't pick up other stuff and throw it in.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the idea, because what's happening, Councilman Diet, is it's not even a case of people dropping off and then maybe seeing something they like and throwing it in the back of their truck and pulling away. We're talking about people that just show up
Yeah.
to park and walk and rummage through this stuff, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not preventing anybody from dumping. If you're a regular homeowner, not just contractors, lots of homeowners have stuff that they bring to the, you're getting rid of furniture, maybe you had a yard sale, you can't get rid of your furniture, you bring it in, it goes into the C&D pile, just the same as everybody else. So I'm not preventing the general public or the contractors from accessing this area, just from the picking of these materials coming out.
So since you're not letting people pick off the pile anymore, which sounds like a sensible thing, would it be sensible to let people leave small pieces of furniture at the goodie pile?
It's something that we would definitely consider. I would consider the small pieces of furniture. We used to leave furniture at the goodie pile. And what happened was it became an issue where people were leaving larger pieces of furniture and it wasn't getting taken, and then we were having to handle it. And then we were also, so now we're like sort of handling it twice, and we're also not getting the benefit of, charging a fee for it. But I would be open to, people, bringing smaller pieces of furniture there if it was necessary, but larger things like dressers and, people leave lamps and end tables and things like that in the goodie pile still all the time. But I think the larger items like a bed frame or a headboard and a footboard, I think those things have been we've stayed away from that for a number of years.
Just to get a better visual, Meg has a better, if she can do a screen share, a better map of.
Oh, okay.
It's clearer than mine is. Just sort of to show like where you want to, like. the
Sure.
Point and how people would cycle back through.
Stop the share, I'll do it again. Oh, there it is, okay.
So that's the scale, right? So you want me, I could stand and show you if you'd like.
Stand and show, and I'll do it with the mouse.
Okay, so here's the scale house, right? So right now, you can see that we have sort of a temporary, like a line of barricade right here that's only like a few cones and such. These are all our water-filled plastic barricades that we use along here, and there's more barricades down on this side as well, right? So normally, people travel on the scale. If they go to dump construction debris, they come in, they dump, they can come back here, loop back around and enter the scale for their empty weight. What I would propose is, I just want to move this area back, this area back closer to where the opening for the hazmat is. There's a wall, a concrete wall here. And so we would just come out from this wall about here, and then it would just line up with this is the alleyway that they would still travel. It wouldn't allow anybody to go through this area, which currently takes place. Those cones are sort of spaced out and people sometimes just drive right through. So basically, if you need to go to the construction debris pile or the metal pile, you'd have to travel onto the scale, which makes sense because then you can also, you're basically telling the person that's working in the scale house what you have for material. They tell you, advise you where to dump it, and then they can also advise you to please dump it and then return on the scale for your final weight, and then you exit from here. This exit over here that you see So there's an exit right here. This is where a lot of people, when they exit the recycling center or the construction debris area, this is the exit for the recycling area to the wet garbage, and there's another exit here that ties in off the road that comes down off the mulch pile on the hill. So what's happening a lot of times is people will come in this way, and if that is blocked off, then they'll try to loop back this way, and then they park in front of these trailers. Or they park over here in front of the ramp that we load the construction debris trailer with. And sometimes they, as you saw on that one image I sent you, that I brought today, they sit right in front of the bins, parked, and then just proceed to walk around. So, obviously, I would have additional signage over here about not being able to enter and come back through that way. And this also just gives the staff an opportunity to be able like, hey, you didn't come on the scale, what are you doing over here? You're not supposed to be in this area, and ask them to leave.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So this new plan, the area sort of in the center at the top?
This
Oh, no, to your, yeah, keep going.
here,
Isn't that like the crushed concrete pile?
yeah, that's crushed concrete where we sell that, so when you come to purchase that, even a contractor, they still have to go on the scale for it. They come across the scale, they tell them what they need. If they tell them they need 2, 3, 4 yards, whatever size of taking, and they get loaded there, and then they exit through that way too. They usually exit right across the scale, or they can, if they don't need to be weighed, if their tear weight is already in the system, they can get loaded right there, and then they just exit the normal direction coming out.
Okay.
But it's a highly trafficked area, not just for my employees and the men and women that work down there, you know, with the loaders and our own trucks and all that stuff. You have a lot of contractor traffic coming in here. So the likelihood of somebody getting run over by a contractor is also there as well. So, just as another added thought.
For me.
Albert?
No, if there's an issue there, I mean, the insurance company is recommending it. I mean, it's difficult. A lot of people are gonna be unhappy. You know, but it's what it is. I mean, it's just gonna force the staff to go over and say, hey,
Right.
you gotta get out of here.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm aware of that, and I think that's the case, and I think they're aware of it, but they know that I'm also supportive of it. So they feel a little more, they will feel, I think, a little more confident in being able to, you know, ask someone to leave, knowing that this is now the new, you know, our new policy. So,
We did receive one public comment on that already via email. I forwarded that to you.
Okay.
It came in just before the meeting started. Is there anyone from the public who has any questions on this?
What's that comment say?
Hold on a second.
Forwarded it to everyone.
Yeah.
Green can.
Okay.
Just to like briefly, because I didn't get a chance to read it, trying to pull my folder together, but just some of the parameters, we must have gotten a grant at some point that spoke to how we use the recycling center, so that was brought in there. And just, I think the final plea being that, that this is a way for the public to recycle different things and save money, because they can get wood and metal products. I'll let you take a look at that and
okay,
after response and include the rest of the board, please.
okay. Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I haven't.
I mean, another way to admit that, just for consideration, what do I know? But you can maybe just limit the number of people down there, like one person or 2 people, 2 trucks, people driving in can be there, as opposed to the 10 that you just showed us. But just a thought.
Seems hard to do.
Yeah, I think it would be hard to do. I think it's a bit, I think honestly, I just think it's, I think whether it's not necessarily, to me, it's not necessarily just the number. I mean, it's the amount. I mean, this incident that took place on Sunday, it was raining at that time on Sunday. This was about 11 or 12 o'clock, I guess, when I got the call. And there was nobody else in there except for this one person, and that one person could have been, you know, really hurt. And so I think that's all I needed to know as far as, you know, not just, obviously, the more people that are in there, the higher likelihood that somebody could get run into by a loader or a truck coming in to, you know, try to get their work done, or, you know, a contractor coming to try to dump these things. It doesn't, it just, I think it's just a bad practice. I think it's just I think it's in the town's best interest really to not, I just have a feeling that we'd be looking at a tremendous lawsuit of some type if that was the case.
Yeah, I think with even one person in there, it's playing a Jenga game with,
Well, it's just
material.
dangerous.
Yeah.
There's more than one person.
I mean, this isn't, you know, I mean, it's just, yeah, there's just a lot of dangerous things in there. I mean, even just, you know, you could walk around there and do the simplest thing and get a nail through the bottom of your foot, stepping on the wrong thing, you know what I mean? And that's the simplest end of it. And obviously we've had instances that were worse, so.
No, it's crystal clear that civil liability abounds in this situation. Again, with the insurance company saying that we should revisit this policy, you know, usually you lean on the side of the insurance company.
So, if you.
Problem, they're gonna tell you that. You
Right.
can fix the problem.
If you are okay with it, I would like to stick with my July 1st, deadline, if you will, that starting effective July 1st, that we're going to close that area to, the public as far as, you know, removing items from that area. And, you know, of course, we will see how it goes, and I will be, you know, I'm open to revisiting it if that is necessary, but I do think this is, I think this is the right move. And I'm glad that you all seem to be supportive.
No further discussion. Do site plan review.
Okay. I do want to add one thing. To my knowledge, and I've checked with some of these places, we're really one of the only townships, I don't know about the 5 western towns, but the 5 eastern towns that even allow this type of thing, or have allowed this type of thing to happen. Like some of them have goodie areas, but a lot of places don't even, once it goes in there, it's off limits to the public. And I would just add too, just like it's a simple thing that happens, but I just want to keep this known too. You know, we have, and the staff has always monitored this very well, but we also have people that like to sometimes go into some of the machines that we use to crush like cans and such. And I know the guys are very happy to help people down there if somebody is collecting cans and bottles and stuff like that, to get the stuff to them before it goes into those machines. But I just, as a public service announcement, since I'm sitting here in front of everybody, please don't stick your hands and body parts inside of those things. If one of those rams decides to release when somebody's arm is in there for some reason, a hydraulic line fails, I mean, it's catastrophic. Even just the gate that gets pulled down to keep everything from jumping out of it when they crush it, that gate could drop and break your arm. So I just implore people, please, just don't, once it's inside of those things, please don't touch it. All right? Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
You betcha.
No, he's just informing the public and setting a new policy for down there. All right, the next item on the agenda was site plan review. We had a public hearing on June 3rd. The purpose of the legislation was for capturing not just businesses, but not-for-profits, anything that was not a single or two-family house to have to be subject to site plan review. My notes from the public hearing were that there were no comments, and so we closed it. So before we set this for adoption on June 24th, I just wanted to make sure everybody here was good with it.
I think it makes sense. It closes a loophole.
Yeah, and actually someone just this morning approached me who lives nearby to the library and was concerned about what the impact of the 1.5 years, at least, of construction is going to, what kind of impact that's going to have on the neighborhood. Are there restraints on times that building can start, has to stop, parking off of the, roadway all on site? And because it's the library, it was a not-for-profit, it wasn't subject to site plan review. So unfortunately, I had to tell her that, but it just makes me wonder, when we have a special permit, we have site plan review, sometimes wetlands applications, things before ZBA, there will be constraints that get put on construction, like hours of operation and things like that. It is something that maybe we want to consider in the, in our code under buildings or construction to like set just town-wide limits. Because if someone has something that has they can get a building permit without any variances, we don't have anything that we can really point to say, hey,
Yeah, really.
they don't, there's no, no review process other than the building department, and nothing that says no starting before 7 AM, something like that. Or, yeah, something like that.
Well, to codify things too, give the building department some juice,
Yes,
in
yes.
essence.
So, I mean, so we have this, the library didn't have to undergo it because this, when we adopt it, we'll still have to get, a week or two by the state. And they've already, I think, got all their permits they needed to get from the building department. So, so I just told her, if you have issues, talk to the building department. This will be the ones monitoring what's
And
going
this
on over
would
there.
also extend to educational institutions too.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
camps, educational institutions, all of those that
Yes,
don't fall under.
exactly. So kind of timely with the comment that I received this morning.
Yeah, we can also squeeze that into the noise chapter. So noise in connection with construction shall start before X and then must end by Y.
Yeah, we have the noise section, also with public nuisances. Is that the same chapter? I have to go back and look.
Reasonable noise. In that chapter.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the DBA and then unreasonable noise, which is the general catch-all. But if you want to have specific guidance for construction vis-a-vis noise, you can put it in that chapter.
so we're good to put this on for the 24th then?
Think so.
Right. Proportionality. The reason this was back on is, Albert, you're going to come back to us with a revised schedule?
I did not, I don't have that as yet. I'm rethinking the whole thing, to be honest.
Is it something that?
I would ask for another week.
I was gonna say, is it something that we can put back on for next week? The reason
That's fine.
being is, we have we've already moved the large home review from us to ZBA. We've given them, that they look at the 6,000, maximum house size differently than how we have it written in our legislation. We've given them the pyramid law. This was the last piece of what we wanted to pull together so that they have the full set of what we want to accomplish with this. So I'm kind of pushing that we.
No, I understand. I'm rethinking it, but I'll have something.
Okay, because I'd like to
Next
be able
week.
to set the public hearing on the 24th, is it? And then have the public hearing July 15th, and so by August 6th, we can maybe have the legislation adopted so that as ZBA starts to get applications, which the moratorium lifts on June 24th or 25th, I think it is. So I suspect that they are going to start to get a whole bunch of applications. And I would like to have a quarter-acre property that wants to build 5,000 square feet, have to go. Yeah.
Well, what was the major difference between yours and Albert's?
It had to do with just hitting different thresholds, but we have another week, so if you can pull that together.
You should probably look at yours again to see if that might.
Yes, and I believe Christina made copies and pre-handed it out ahead of today, just so that we have it. There were minor differences, but the way it ramped up was kind of inconsistent and different, so.
I don't know if that's such a big deal, really, the incremental differences. I mean, I don't think it is. It doesn't have to be even. I mean, 100 or 50 or whatever. the strata, I don't think makes any that much of a difference.
It's illogical, because it was like, well, you know, if you go from 0.25 to 0.3 acres, you get 100 extra square feet. But if you're going that same, you know, from 0.5 to 0.55, you only get 50 feet, 50, additional 50.
Depending on the size of the property.
Yeah, so it just, there's something about it that is inconsistent in its application. And I, whenever I look at legislation, like, there's a piece of me, it's like, is it consistent? It's like the mother in me. You want to be consistent in how you treat your children. You know, you want to be consistent in how you treat the public. So kind of fall back for me as far as trying to be fair.
Yeah, I'd also still like to try to reduce the amount of nonconformity we create all at once. Because, you know, it'll put a hardship on people. Like, if you have an older home and it's on a half acre and it's currently 3,000 square feet, and we set the benchmark at 2,500 square feet, and your foundation's failing and you have to demo your home and put up a new one, are you gonna be held to the 2,000 or 2,500 square feet, or can you rebuild a 3,000 square foot home? You know, in order to rebuild what you had, you're gonna have to go to the ZBA, because it's 500 square feet more than what is allowed for your half acre based in this. So
Should that be mentioned in the legislation? That scenario,
It's grandfathered in.
yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it's within the foundation and
Mm-hmm.
nothing's being added.
Yeah, that's a
but
good.
what if they want to move it to become even more conforming? Because now that we added the pyramid, some of these older homes on these smaller lots might be impacted by both the pyramid and the SFLA. So if they want to take their house, the foundation's failing, they need to rebuild it, then they're going to move it, rebuild it. Can they rebuild, you know, at their existing square footage? I mean, typically.
There's a lot to this,
There's a lot to
a
it.
lot of
That's why, you
complication
know,
to it.
because typically when you look at things, and, you know, Albert, you're saying it all the time with the wetlands, if you're pre-existing non-conforming in a wetlands, we want to make you more conforming, right? That's typically the desire, is to become further from the wetlands, become more conforming. So in a situation like this, where let's say the benchmark is 2,500 square feet at a half an acre, and you have a 3,000 square foot home, well, are we saying that now that you have to demolish your home and you want to rebuild, you have to rebuild in a conforming square footage? Because that's kind of taking value away from that property, because you had 3,000, but now you're only allowed 2,500. So that's where my desire to reduce creating significant nonconformity off the bat comes from.
If you grandfather it in, I mean, it's not that you want people to be more conforming, but you really don't want them to be more non-conforming.
Right.
This is,
Right.
so if you got 3,000 square feet of this piece of property and they have to rebuild the house where it is, as it is, 3,000 square feet, grandfathered, it should be okay.
It should be, but it's going to depend on the variance that they have to go through. So then they have to,
They won't have to go through the
Expend-
variance if we grandfather.
Yes,
No,
no,
but-
I was going to say, my next question to sort of follow up on you is, if you're building in kind in place, pre-existing non-conforming, can the building department not have to write a denial letter? Like like we want that language in the code so that it doesn't become a denial letter that gets sent to ZBA.
Yeah.
So we exclude it right then and there.
yeah, but let's say your house is from like the early 1900s and you want to rearrange the way it's structured. You're not going to rebuild the exact same house. You know, maybe you want to use the same square footage, but it's a totally different design. It's a new build. So, you know, this is where it gets tricky,
It's in
because
the footprint.
But you're saying,
They're,
what if you want to move?
what
or
if you want
adjust the
to adjust it so that you're maybe not now non-conforming with both the pyramid and the SFLA, but move it so maybe you're conforming with the pyramid, but you don't want to lose your square footage. You know, it's,
But if we give them the right to rebuild in kind in place and that they want something different, then they should go to the ZBA.
there's a lot to this. That's what I started this, and then the more I had more questions for myself when I got alone. It's an awful lot. And it's almost like I came to the feeling that we need a land use attorney to advise us on this in terms of it's a zoning issue. This is bigger than the board deciding what the size of a house. It really is.
It's a useful tool, but could be right there, Albert.
Well, I mean, and so part of it is the way I originally went through it, I looked at existing conditions and chose benchmarks that would maintain the existing character, not create massive nonconformity, and still give people a little wiggle room to do things on their property without always having to go to the ZBA. Of course, there's always going to be some nonconforming properties created, but it's really, the intention was to set a benchmark that most people aren't meeting already. So most people have already built what they want, but it's also to prevent, that tear down of a small house and putting up tearing down a 2,500 square foot house and putting up a 6,000 square foot house. So it's kind of to prevent that, to create those benchmarks, but it doesn't work when you keep decreasing. So now 50% of the homes in that area are now non-conforming. That, it doesn't make sense. You're trying to redefine an already developed area.
Well, look,
I mean,
it's a
that's-
fine line that kind of moves. I mean, you want to create as little non-conforming as you can,
Right.
but we also shouldn't be afraid of creating non-conforming.
No, I'm not afraid of creating non-conforming, but I think 50% non-conforming is too much. I think that's too high of a non-conformance rate for certain areas, and I look at it and it's one thing for the Heights, right? The Heights is pretty much 100% non-conforming. There are very few conforming buildings in the Heights.
The lower heights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and I'm looking in like those lower thresholds, right? So the less than a quarter acre to an acre, that whole zone there. So most of the height structures are already non-conforming. There's, not as many non-height structures are non-conforming when it comes to setbacks and things like that. So,
I do have to say, it kind of sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, it's okay.
It feels like the grandfather piece is missing. And it feels like it might make sense.
Yeah, we definitely have to put that in.
I have to define it in some fashion, whether it's defining that you can maintain your current
Right,
SFLA and carry it over into a new
Yeah.
construction or something
Yeah.
to
And
clarify.
maybe we need a land use lawyer just to look at it really quickly. I have somebody I can recommend. Because
We
we have.
have a pre-existing non-conforming chapter in our zoning code,
Mhm.
so we would just add it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if there's applicable provisions, those will control.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we'll look at that.
Yeah,
I'll look at it
let's look
for the
at that.
next meeting.
Yeah.
But that's just, and it's also one of those things where now we're piling more and more on the ZBA. So I want to make sure that it's clear what the parameters are so that it's easier for them to review them cleanly and clearly and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with, if the house has been there for 100 years and it burns down, I don't have a problem with building a house, same size, same place.
Right, it's no change in character.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. But I just want to make sure it's clear that that's allowed and it's not.
Yeah, and the only other add-on to that is, the Heights is always going to come before ZBA for
Yeah.
For a
side
million
yard
reasons.
setbacks to start off with.
And if you want to just,
But
Stella's still out here, you can ask her how she feels.
no, it's not taking double down on this. I think they're aware, and we've had private conversations over time.
Yeah, and they're not a problem with it.
Right,
actually.
exactly. No, and my only concern is like in, C-zone, somebody who has a modest home, like, are we forcing someone with lesser means to have to come before ZBA? So are we pushing a greater burden
On smaller
and
homes.
further,
The grandfather clause would help.
yes, exactly, but like, how do we want to word that grandfather?
Right.
Okay, maybe you could come up with standard, pre-existing, non-conforming, and then also just something that is change in square footage. Even if they,
Or increase in square footage.
no increase.
They can make it smaller if they
Yeah.
want.
No increase in square footage, even if they
Well, if they wanna-
relocate the
yeah, if
house
they
on a
wanna
different part of the
increase,
property
then
or
it would be a
reconfigure.
Mm.
Yeah, the only thing, yeah, they're gonna increase, then it's, yeah.
And then the issue becomes, how do you prove what your SFLA was prior to whatever incident? Like, let's say you have a fire, it's based off whatever the assessors have record for. And so then in that case, I would keep our, yeah, then it's fine, because then the code already has, it doesn't include basements, like the assessor's data doesn't include basements. If you'd want what is included in the assessor's data to be reflected in what's included in our code so that it's not creating gaps in the data.
So let's bring up another issue because there's definitely gaps in the data.
Right.
And should we have like, what do you call? A short time period where people can come and say, hey, my house actually does have a finished basement.
Amnesty period.
The amnesty period. So we can actually fill the data set properly.
We did do that, I mean, the assessors did send out a letter last year,
Right.
and we did get numerous calls, like, do I wanna fill this out? Do I wanna report that they're only filling 2 bathrooms, and I actually have 3? And they updated their database. It wasn't sent to, code enforcement to see whether or not, like, when did you get that 3rd bathroom? Those types of things will happen as homeowners.
Maybe we should have another one, and is it an assessor problem or a building problem?
So what you're talking about the code enforcement side of people who did things without building permits to get proper C of Os.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or both.
Just for thought.
But it seems like we want all the data, we want accurate data,
Mhm.
and,
Mhm.
so have an amnesty period, we'll get more data.
Coming up with what ifs, and that's the question with this, my dilemma with it personally. And I really don't know if we need to have some good advice to go through this, somebody that knows it inside and out, rather than us talk it out and go, okay, well, this sounds good, honestly.
I don't want to bog it down too much, but if we act quickly, sure.
And we do have an attorney on staff who has.
Tuesday actually called me a land use expert, just for the record.
So we
Well, and
can
we can
start
also-
and bounce.
Get information from the public hearing and see if it's something that, that's time for. Okay.
All right, but we'll pick this back up next week, and Albert, you've got more that you want to bring to us as well.
Yes.
The next, just what we have left on the agenda, we have, this meeting is going longer than anticipated. So we've got business on town property for 2 properties who want amendments to what was issued to them. The application for a dock moratorium exemption for Fuhrer, and then we also had the dock code draft discussion. We are going to need to do, we need to shorten up the meeting, so I'm going to suggest that we move dock code draft to next week, because
Now,
that was going to take up what I thought was going to be a big chunk of time.
we're gonna have to apply for an exemption anyway.
Yes, yeah, and I was going to go through that, but so I'm going to scratch dock code and move that to next week, and then board member reports might get short shrift again. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of lay out that change as I'm thinking through, and I see we have guests who are coming in for executive session on potential land acquisition. I don't want to.
So board member reports also for next week.
Yeah. Okay, so business on town property is next. The first one who is requesting an amendment is the Tuck Shop, and I have previously recused myself on any of the ice cream vendors because the owner of the Tuck Shop was most recently a client, no more, but I feel like I'm gonna do the wait a year before I weigh in on any conflicting things. So I'm gonna step out, make you take over, and just tell me when to come back in. All right.
So the request from the Tuck Shop is to move their ice cream station down towards where the bathrooms and the gazebo are for at Crescent Beach. So the food truck has always been parked down there. In previous years, there hasn't been enough space to have multiple trucks down there because the food truck was a trailer, so it was towed, so you always needed to move access to get a truck in there to move it, should you have to move it for any reason. This year, the food truck is new, it's a big van, so you can just get in and drive away. And so the ice cream truck is asking if they can park in the same location as the food truck. Now, I think it gets a little complicated because we have 2 ice cream vendors and a food truck. And you can't fit 2 ice cream vendors and a food truck down there. You can fit the ice cream truck and food truck, but it's tight. And if the ice cream truck is supposed to be moving every, hour or so, it might get difficult for them to be pulling in and out. It's adjacent to the handicap spot. We can look at some photos and I want to hear what you guys think.
They sent some photos.
Yeah,
You sent them?
here, I'll bump it.
Okay.
So Ken went down and met with the food truck and the ice cream van. So did you get it? Christina, do you have pictures
Oh, there it
available to
is.
share, or
It's
do you want me to download them all?
Came through.
Oh, sure. Okay. Let's see if I can.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I looked at them when they came through the first time. But is that unfair to one of the ice
I
cream
mean,
people?
they're super tiny.
Like, how do you?
That's the challenge. I mean, that's the challenge. And the way it fit best here, I'm gonna share, I have one picture up, I'll share. So Albert, you can see.
No, I've seen the pictures. Frankly, I think it's too tight.
Too tight?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
waiting for you guys to.
Blocking the gazebo.
Yeah, so the, if you have the food truck parked in front where the smaller van is, it seemed like it was too much bulk next to the handicap space. It seemed like it was kind of intrusive. So, and it couldn't be pulled up as tight, so then we swapped them. It is kind of a lot in that space.
It's kind of a big barrier actually coming down and going around that curve.
Yeah, that was one of the concerns. Someone thought that, well, at least if someone's coming around the curve too fast, they'll hit the trucks and not go through onto the beach. That was another way of thinking about it. I'm just hoping nobody ever does that again. But it's up to you guys what you think, whether or not we should, have them both there, or if we should keep it as it was approved, where the food trucks go down to the other end where the perpendicular turns into parallel parking, and then the food truck stays at this end.
That's where I am.
That's where you are. You want to keep them the way they are.
Yeah, I think what we've decided before seems to work. This looks crowded, it looks. And how do you decide which ice cream truck is there?
Yeah.
I mean, one's fair, one's not fair.
Okay. All right, so then we'll keep it.
Unless you want to rotate them on a weekly basis.
Well, they're supposed to be mobile too, so they're supposed to go to Waves Beach and Crescent, share the space. But I feel like once they get in there, it's gonna be tight to keep moving. So,
First come, first served.
all right, so we'll keep it as it was originally resolved. All right,
Do you feel the same way?
I think it's tight.
Okay.
All right. Amber can come back in. The next one that came up was for Bone Spa. And it was essentially the same request that was sort of denied in the final resolution. He wants to move the lockbox is, outside of the tents. We kind of had everybody keeping their stuff in their designated space. But he wants to move his case outside of the tents, the bomb spot one. And then he wants a designated parking spot, which we don't guarantee to anybody. They can always get a beach sticker, and if they manage to get a parking spot, great. Yeah, and we also say that you can't cone off parking spots. And so he wants us to reconsider coning off the parking spot, giving him a designated parking space, and the lockbox with his storage container.
And they're connected to Sunset Beach.
No, he's an independent, but he's right in front of Sunset Beach.
So maybe Sunset can give them a parking spot.
Who has a parking spot? Does,
Nobody has a designated parking spot.
what's,
They get
what's
stickers.
the paddleboard? He doesn't have a
No,
spot,
he doesn't have one.
Yeah, I don't think we need to set that precedent. I mean, in allowing one, really. I like your suggestion, Pat, maybe Sunset Beach
If you let them put
would work out.
his equipment outside the tent, then other people are gonna put their equipment outside the tent, and then you have equipment all over the beach.
You're starting a process.
Yeah, we tried to make everybody conform to kind of the same area, the same space. Even with the paddleboard, we said we want you to keep all your stuff in your designated, 20 by 20, 20 by 10, I guess it is.
So the resolution said 20 by 20.
It's at 20 by 20?
Yeah, and I went down there yesterday just to see. He only had one 10 by 10 tent structure up
Right.
left overnight. So, but the last time I took a walk on the beach, there were two 10 by 10 tents, but it's not 20 by 20.
Right. So
Do we think it's okay for him to reconfigure his
If the
400 square
tents-
feet?
Right, that's a good
If
question.
you give him a 20 by 20, he can, come
Do
and do
20
almost anything he wants
25 by-
inside that.
25 by 10?
And the tents are 10 by 10?
Mhm.
So that means he puts them side by
Is
side.
that adjacent, immediately adjacent to each other?
Yes.
10 by 10, they're not like separated, so it's actually the areas at large.
So this isn't using half of the actual space.
Right.
Because he's not going
The
full
10
20
area
feet.
is 10 by 20.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
move it a little forward, put things behind,
Yeah.
inside of his 20 by 20 square.
Mhm. Allow him to put it behind.
Well, he wants to put it next to,
Right,
like
right.
to the side.
Which is kind of where it looked like. Well, no, it might be underneath where from this tent structure was yesterday. You had one, remember?
Just as long, sorry, no,
Oh, no, I thought you had some information.
just as long as they were adjacent, not
So,
Because we said that the area of the business cannot be larger than 20 by 20. And his tents are 10 by 20. That gives him another 10 by 20 square feet that he's
Yeah.
not necessarily using, so he could shift it to the side and put
you know,
his.
and actually, if you look at E, the area of the business cannot be larger than 20 by 20.
Right.
There shall be no more than two 10 by 10 tents, and proposed storage lockers shall be located within 20 by 20 foot area. So maybe the area of the business cannot be larger than 400 square feet, and the proposed storage locker has to be located within that 400 square feet.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
yes, yeah.
You okay with that, Ben?
I'm okay with that.
That's, I'm fine with that.
And no parking.
No parking. We don't give anybody else designated parking spot. And no coning, because that's also, that gets frowned upon.
Yes.
People get very upset about that.
Okay, all right. All right, that's that. Okay, application for dock moratorium exemption on pier. We had the public hearing on June 3rd. We closed it, Yeah, I was-
Dock is falling apart.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Fix it.
so, yes.
Under
you
the
got
new
it.
dock.
They did fix the dock, that's the problem. They fixed the dock without a permit. It was in excess of $10,000, so they needed a permit to do it. Some of the repairs that they did weren't quite up to the original permit. So some of the materials used were not the materials that were specified, things of that nature. So the DEC did, write them a violation or a letter of correction. So they're trying to comply with the letter of correction from the DEC, but they can't do that without us lifting the dock moratorium so that they can then move forward with an application to us to solve the problem.
Legalize it.
To legalize
They
it.
also significantly expanded the walkway
Right.
to the dock. So that was totally anew. That was not the original approved dock and ramp.
Does WMAC have a problem with the location of the dock? I mean, there was one there before.
It was a pre-existing dock, but there were other glitches with it, like.
Correct. The materials were the big thing. It was in place. So the WMAC, I don't think has an issue with the size and location of the dock. It's just the materials that have to be swapped out, which they're willing to do. And also the walkway has to be addressed because that was never approved by the WMAC. However, I spoke to N Consultants, their agent, and he's going to recommend to his client that they remove that the offending walkway. So to just revert back to the existing.
And the DEC also requires that they chuck the float, so that it never sits on the bottom. So they have to put blocks under it. And right now, there's a gap between, I believe it's the dock and the float, where they haven't been allowed to reconnect the ramp because they were issued the notice of violation and not allowed to touch it. So they say it's also unsafe conditions because there's a missing access point.
I mean, theoretically, the moratorium is pointed at new docks.
Correct.
Yes.
So this is an old dock that they were bad actors on. And
Speaking to that, Ben, bad actors, I mean, they replaced the dock did repairs without a permit. Lucas Post only was dictated, they put in treated lumber. Posts, the wooden walkway in the wetlands, they extended. And then I saw Reed had talked about that there was an accessory structure that was approved but never really finalized with the Suffolk County Department of Health. And then the building inspector indicated at the time when he was going to inspect that they were doing work in the house without a permit.
Correct. And they also
And
brought
so,
fill in and placed it into the wetlands. So
what, I'm sorry,
they brought
Phil,
fill in and it was.
I mean, it's just a huge list of
They're
compliance.
But they're trying to legalize it, so why delay the inevitable? They're gonna.
and if they're gonna fix it, I assume part of the fix is to get rid of the treated lumber.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
And that's all,
Which is bad.
all things that we would discuss when we reopen the public hearing on this.
Correct, so it's
So this
not
is
like
just to decide whether or not to let them do that.
bring them back in front of the board
Yeah.
to apply and tell them exactly what they're gonna do to ameliorate the problem.
I think this is an opportunity to fix something that's gone completely sideways.
Just to look at timing, if we do decide to allow them to, what is the exact ask we're doing? An exemption. We would do that via resolution at the next town board meeting?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be June 24th. So then July 15th would be, we would renotice, they would have an opportunity to renotice to have the public.
Correct.
So they could have the public hearing on July 15th? Or do we have, we don't have to set the public hearing, we're just reopening, so we just want to renotice.
Correct, because technically you don't have to, but since it's been so long, I think it should be done.
I think so too.
That should be renoticed.
Yeah. Okay, because I anticipate with the dock code, especially with some of the things that we want to do with it, you're not meeting with Bill Garrity until later next week. there's no way we need to start the process on setting a public hearing to ask for yes. So if that's the case, we wouldn't be setting our public hearing for amending the dot code, just the dot code itself. I'll put in the timeline for the extension. We'd set the public hearing July 15th, have the public hearing August 5th, adopt or reject August 26th. Because we do think that there's going to be a lot of public comment, that would be resetting a new public hearing September 16th for an October 7th public hearing and adopting or rejecting late October.
Right.
Like, that's kind of where I think this is. So if we allow this exemption to go through, then they can then have we can reopen the public hearing July 15th so that sometime in August, it's possible, but it depends on how the public hearing goes, whether or not we allow them to move forward mid-August. So it gives them 2 months earlier. So I'm just giving you the timeline. Like, if we choose not to allow the exemption, it pushes them back another 2 months.
Makes sense.
Well, actually even more than that, three and a half months.
Well, if we're gonna extend the dock moratorium another 3 months or so,
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
that takes us to the end of December. I'd rather they solve this problem sooner than
Take us to the end of October. So we
Okay.
push back, we
Defend
push
real
back
Right.
water.
To get them, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
rather they.
be able to remediate this. And that's why I'm looking at timeline, just because
Mhm.
when will we get this issue fixed?
I assume there were also outstanding violations and fines for,
That would be a code enforcement question.
Well, yeah, so they had to pay additional fees to refile, or Christina, on this one, did they have to? Fiora? Did they have to pay additional fees, Fiora, for this?
Not for staff, because maybe we both department
Yeah, let me look into, I'm not sure what was done as far as on the enforcement side on this one.
I feel like there was something
Yeah, it was a while
a
ago.
year ago.
all right, well,
It's not
we'll solve that too.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing it up because we need to solve for that as well.
Correct.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, the fact is they were bad actors and here we're accommodating bad action. Like, you know,
But it will benefit the town and the environment in the end. So,
Mhm.
don't wanna throw the baby
And
with the bathwater.
they already had an open hearing before the moratorium, right? That we then.
Yes.
So it's not like this is a brand new issue. This started before the moratorium and then it got held up. It would be nice to just wrap it up, and I'd like them to get the treated lumber out of the
Yeah.
nice, small, sensitive ecosystem.
Notwithstanding that they do have dirty hands here, they have not touched a stitch out there, and they've done everything we've asked in the interim, and hired one of the best environmental outfits on the East End and consultants to help them legalize. So they have taken, the proper steps.
They stopped being bad actors.
Correct.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with the
we'll
exemption.
schedule the hearing.
Grant them the exemption.
Oh, no, I don't, I would rather have a hearing. But I'm just,
Well, in order to have a hearing, we have to give them an exemption so that they can come back before us and we can go through all of the
and
list of
I'm
things
not
you
in
have.
favor of approving.
I am in favor of approving this, just
Exemption?
because I'd like to environmentally get this fixed.
So if there's, we could have a resolution.
Yeah. All right. That one, it's 2:41. We've had some guests waiting for executive session to discuss potential acquisition. So I'd like to close the work session and move into executive session.
And make that motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.